Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Troy-Munson on Revealing-Wholeness. Today we've been working on undoing the mind, and we're in the beginning stages of that process. I want to at least cover a couple things. I'm not covering a lot of what exactly the lessons are, or their deeper meaning is. You may already ferret some of that out on your own, but at this point we're just trying to begin to let the mind go. Last lesson we talked about, I do not understand anything I see. And the second part of it was that these thoughts do not mean anything to me. And so that particular lesson was one of, because we see things from such a limited point of view, we technically don't truly understand anything we see. And yet we make judgments, snap judgments on it instantly. And that then leads to thoughts that really trouble us, but again, they don't mean anything. We try to say they do. We try to hold on to our limited perspective and our positions and take stands about even worldviews and economic views, school views, learning views, workplace views, all kinds of things we'll take stands on, thinking that we are correct and we are right and we know better. And so maybe there's some things that certainly would be better done a different way, but the ultimate thing to create somebody else that is wrong and that we're right actually leads to unhappiness, and that's going to be in later lessons as we dig into that. But this next one, I wanted to review that last lesson, because these kind of lead right into it in a much more profound way. So the first part of this lesson today is that we have to realize that we're never upset for the reason that we think. And if we're jumping to conclusions in our minds because we don't understand the things we see, and therefore the thoughts we think aren't really relevant, we now tend to get upset over really erroneous things. And maybe you found yourself in this situation, not probably every time you're upset, but that you've been upset and then all of a sudden you realize you thought something totally different than what the situation was happening. And because of that, you jumped to conclusions and got more upset, and then you found yourself ending up having to apologize because now you projected your anger or your unhappiness onto somebody else, and they were technically innocent because we did it all on our own. And so I have found myself in that same situation on a number of occasions, and I'm sure all of you have figured that out too. And there are times that we are technically right, but like I tell folks when they're deeply unhappy most of the time, I said, you really have a choice. You can be happy or you can be right. You cannot be both. And so you can feel good about being right for a short period of time, but every time we make somebody else wrong and make them guilty or sad or shameful, eventually it hurts us. Now we'll justify and say, well, they made me feel bad by their actions in the first place, and so they deserve it. And that's not necessarily a great place to be living, by the way. But I digress. And so the first part of it is whatever pain that you're experiencing, like we even use the phrase, what a pain, when something irritates us or upsets us, because it literally causes us pain. And so whatever situation is in your life, big or small, you can apply this to. And so I don't want you to exclude anything as well. If you decide that, well, I can let go of this one thing, or I can at least use it for this, or this, let go of this upsettedness, you end up now putting orders of difficulty on things. And as we're going to find out, those orders really don't exist. Everything is exactly the same. And I'll explain that towards the end of this lesson as well. But right now, if you keep one form of upset, you cannot let others go. Even though you think you can, you can't. So you either have to let them all go, or you have to keep them all. And so it's a matter of peace. Do you want peace and happiness and love, or don't you? It's a really, really simple question. And in the beginning, the tiny mind, or the monkey mind, or the egoic mind, it loves to hold on to hurts and opinions and wrongs and just really throw them back at people all the time. But it only leads to unhappiness in your relationships, and then eventually you're unhappy because nobody wants to hang around you. And so as we go through the process, really be careful not to keep any upset sacred, so to speak. And really the more profound it is to you, and the worse it is and the harder it is, the more you ought to be considering letting it go. And so the lesson today, as you apply it 2 or 3 times today, you can even do it a couple times tomorrow, you just simply say, I am not worried about blank for the reason I think, or I am not depressed about blank for the reason I think. And you can apply it to anything in your life. So I'm not upset about the traffic for the reason I think. I am not upset at my spouse for the reason I think. I'm not upset that I don't have cable for the reason I think. I mean, it could be literally anything. And so as you go through this process, spend some time maybe thinking about some upsets, some hurts, some pain that you've been in, and just simply apply the idea to those things. So anything that would cause you depression, worry, jealousy, hatred, anger, it's going to take all kinds of forms. And none of it's technically true. We just decided to judge it that way, and now we become upset by it. And so definitely, I am not angry or afraid or sad for the reasons that I think. So that's what we're going to practice. Now, the second part of this is, so I'm just going to reiterate the first part. The first part is, I am never upset for the reason I think. Now, the next part is, I am upset because I see something that is not there. Now, this is the first part that's really going to stretch your mind. Like, what are you talking about? And so when we talk about something that is not there, it's technically false. And so we're believing things that aren't necessarily true, and we make a snap judgment. Most of our judgments are erroneous. And so to judge means that I'm going to take my limited perspective from where I'm sitting right now, and I'm going to make a blanket judgment that something is bad or something is good. And really, ultimately, I have no business doing that. Nobody does. But we do it all the time. And so we have to all of a sudden come to realization and take some power away from this monkey mind of ours by deciding that, you know what, I'm upset because I see something that's not there. I'm looking into something that I'm condemning somebody for being evil or having ill will intent when it's actually not true 99% of the time. And so if you have a spouse or a loved one or somebody that you care for deeply, or a parent that you are still around often enough, and you tend to get on each other's nerves or get in each other's hair, you have to ask yourself, is that person technically have ill will toward you? And ultimately, when we get right down to it, realize, you know what? My spouse doesn't have ill will towards me. I don't have ill will towards them. I don't wish them ill. I don't wish my children ill. I want them to be successful. I want them to be happy. I want my spouse to be happy. I want my parents to be happy. I want my friends to be happy. I don't wish them ill will. And so what I want you to understand about yourself is that you are a good-willed person. So that's, if you truly believe that and it's true about you, and you're here listening to this, you probably are, because you're actually wanting to expand your mind and get rid of some unhappiness that's in your head that you somehow got there and you're trying to undo it. And that's what we're going through this process for. But we have to also understand that the people out there, they want to be happy too. That's their goal. And they don't have ill will too. They just feel like they are in pain, that they have worries, they have hurts, that they perceived incorrectly as well. And they tend to take it out in poor ways. And so here's a little bonus for you today. So we talked about these two concepts. This last one, I'm upset because I see something that's not there. Well, when we have a relationship where we believe ill will, it's really to our detriment. But the moment we let go of that ill will, we now allow really beauty to come into the relationship. We no longer hold the person hostage, nor myself in holding them hostage. And so we let go of those hurts and angers and pain. Okay, so here's the gift. There are no small upsets. They are all equally disturbing to your peace of mind. And so I want to reiterate that. There are no small upsets. All upsets are the same. Some of you out there may have realized what I realized probably 20 years ago. I kept wondering why I would just get so mad at the smallest thing, like walking and not being able to pull my keys out of the pocket or something really small and silly. But then with something big, I seem to just handle in stride. And it's because in my mind at that time, I had already placed levels of difficulty, if you will. And so some things are small, some things are big, but ultimately anything that disrupts our peace is all the same. But something that seems small, if it upsets me just as much as something big, then technically it holds more weight because it took something so small to reach the same level of upset as something big. And so it seemed almost unfair, if you will. I remember, why do I fly off the handle at such little things, and yet big things were no big deal? Like, let's say I lost a $100 bill. Oh, I'll just be more careful. But something small would make me way more upset than something large. And the reason is because there is no level in upsets. They're all the same. Small things hold just as much weight as big things, but because they're tiny, they seem bigger because they cause the same level of upset. And so as we begin to unprogram the mind and realize that all these things that upset me, I'm going to treat them all equal and all the same. And so this last half of the lesson is I am angry at whatever it is, blank, because I see something that is not there. So as you take a moment or two to mind search, maybe a full minute to kind of look at things that have upset you, let's say over the last day or two or years even. Hey, I am angry at my dog for digging holes because I see something that's not there. I am worried about bills because I see something that is not there. And so I want you to take the time to go through a couple of those things. It doesn't take long, maybe 15, 20, 30 seconds, and 2 or 3 times throughout the day. So if you pull up this podcast again and say, okay, let me review, great. I just want to go through those couple of exercises so that I can begin to unlock my head and move more into peace. Because ultimately, if we hold on to the negative emotions, the anger, the worry, the fear, the hatred, that all festers inside of our body. That is holding on to energy that has no business being inside of us, because we have to cherish those energies to keep them. So if you know somebody who's generally unhappy most of the time, they're holding on to a large part of unhappiness all the time to stay like that. The day they let it go is the day that they find some real freedom in life. And so if we're going to move from one of ill health to one of vibrant health, we have to be able to let go of the things in our life that don't have any business being there in glorious beings that we are. And so we're trying to let out the joy, the peace, the love that is our natural state that's always been within us. It's not something we have to try to go attain. If you just let go of your thoughts for even a few seconds and realize how peaceful your mind is and how much happier you are having that peaceful mind, you realize right away that that's what you're wired for. Though somebody who's deeply unhappy will tell you that they're wired for hatred. They've gotten that turned around. But as we begin this process, we're going to undo those things. So stick with me. Until next time, I'm Dr. Troy Munson on Revealing Wholeness.
This concludes another episode of Revealing Wholeness with Dr. Troy Munson. If you have any questions concerning this podcast or others, you can reach Dr. Munson by email at chiroman, that's CHIRO man, at dr.com. Or you can call him at his office during office operation hours at 360-893-8586. This show is sponsored by Infinity Whole Health on the Disruptors Podcast Network.
The information on this podcast from Dr. Troy Munson is meant to educate the listener on a variety of health issues. It is not meant to diagnose or treat any conditions.